All right, so good afternoon. Thank you again for joining us for this session. This is the workshop on creating job descriptions to attract your best fit special education teacher candidates. My name is Megan Steiner. I work on the statewide team that supports schools in CSI, and I specifically work on human capital strategies, which includes recruitment, hiring, development, induction, retention of teachers, as well as other staff and leaders in schools and school systems. Now, if you've already joined us, you'll have noticed that in the chats, there is a document to download, the Word doc that is a note-taking template that we'll be using throughout this session. Because this is a workshop, it is an interactive session, and there will be links and questions to answer and notes to write in that document. If you are joining us on a pre-recorded session, so you're joining us asynchronously, you'll see that in the description of the YouTube video, there will be a link to where you can find posted the note-taking document. Also, while you're with us, while you're accessing these documents, later on, we will be doing a sort of self-assessment of a special educator job description from each of your own LEAs. Now, that doesn't mean you're sharing it with anyone else. You're just looking at it yourself. But to get a head start on that, if you can right now, take a moment to access either a posted version or maybe an internal draft of a job description for a special education teacher in your school or LEA. Maybe you find one that is posted on your website or on PA Educator, something like that, or you may have an internal folder drive that has such a job description that you can open. So with that, moving on. This is, as many of you know, part of a series of recruitment and hiring workshops that will meet at lunchtime through the end of April. We have a few more. They will be recorded and posted on the PDE Accelerated Learning YouTube channel. And this is my email address. If you have any questions, I'll leave it up there for a brief moment in case anyone wants to copy the email address down. Also, if you are joining us synchronously, yesterday you will have received an email that has the slide deck in it, and therefore you'll also have access to this email address through that slide deck. All right, so I mentioned there are a few more sessions in this series. They are on implementing, refining a uniform teacher interview process that aligns with LEA priorities, implementing or refining a uniform school leader interview process that aligns with LEA priorities, and implementing or refining the use of demonstration lessons in the selection process for teachers. And just as you did for this session, you can register through those through the patent.net/events website by looking at the calendar and looking for those particular events. So the objectives for the session are that participants will identify effective practices for writing special educator job descriptions that will attract target candidates, consider how to prioritize the information included in job descriptions, and begin planning how to apply the practices to your own special education job descriptions or posts. Now, as with the last session, we'll use the phrase job post and job description interchangeably here. Job posts usually are referring to something that is shorter and used explicitly for recruitment. And whereas a job description might be more once someone is hired or has a job offer, you look at a full, thorough job description. But even the shorter job post should ideally link to any available full job description with more thorough information about the role, the school, and the LEA. So our agenda is first, we will explore examples of job posts for special educators. That's where this interactive note-taking document is important because that will provide you the links to these examples. Effective practices particular to job posts for special educators, and taking self-assessment notes on your own job description or job post from your own district or school, a deeper dive into desired special education teacher competencies, next steps, and optional LEA planning time. Excuse me. So that last amount of time, approximately the first 45 minutes will be in a full group. And then approximately the last half hour will be for folks who are participating with one or more colleagues from your same LEA. We've created breakout rooms for you at that point, about 45 minutes into the session. And you can use the notes you've taken on the note-taking template to begin planning next steps. Those who are not participating with any colleagues from your LEA can also reflect on next steps and practices in your LEA with everyone else who will stick around in the main room of the Zoom session. So why focus on job descriptions for special educators? Well, this first bullet probably is obvious to you and maybe the reason why you're viewing this in the first place. Even before the pandemic and the heightened job market, recruiting enough special educators who are qualified was already a familiar challenge. Vacancies in special education can also have particularly adverse impacts on high-need students. Now, for all educator candidates, whether they arrive at your job post through a link from your own LEA website, a post on Facebook, a job search platform, or anywhere else, all candidates will view this content, the actual job post itself, the job description, and good candidates will comb through it thoroughly for any hints about what the role in the school are like. So we'll now look for effective practices in some examples. In the note-taking template, look at the links listed under Explore Examples. So there are examples from 5 different LEAs. You don't need to look through all of them right now, maybe just the ones that seem most interesting to you. But we'll take about 8 minutes to click through those examples. And as you are doing that, in the note-taking document, there is space for you to respond to these questions. What do you notice in these job descriptions? What content or types of information might you want to include in your own job descriptions for special educators? And what are some keywords? Excuse me, I am alert. I just keep yawning. I'm sorry. What are some keywords or phrases that you may want to include in your own job descriptions for special educators? So after the next several minutes, you have to go through these. And after that, we'll talk about some of these examples as we go through several specific effective practices for special educator job descriptions. And we'll post the template again for those of you who just joined us. So take about one more minute to think about these examples. And if you haven't yet, jot down some notes in the note-taking template in response to these questions, especially about what sorts of information or some keywords or phrases that give you ideas about what you may want to include in your own job descriptions. All right, so before we move on, would anyone like to share any of their responses to questions number 1 or 3 in the chat? So what are some things you noticed in these job descriptions? Or you could just type in any keywords or phrases you noticed that you may want to include or maybe adapt in your own job descriptions. Okay, so that's an interesting point. They're more about the district and students than about the candidate. And we do want it to be about both, right? So some job descriptions or job posts may go more to one side than the other, more about the school, the LEA, the students that the candidate will be working with. But we also want them, of course, to be about the candidate and who they are looking for too. So that's an interesting thing to point out about, which sort of information do they include? Any keywords or phrases? Oh, thank you. Yes, one of them did say, we are excited about you because you will do this and that and that. That is a great way to point out who you are looking for as well. Working with students, families, and colleagues. Yes, and we'll talk in just a moment about some effective practices, including showing how special educators will collaborate with others as a useful practice in these posts. So moving on to some effective practices for job descriptions for special educators. So the role of job descriptions can help make a first impression, a positive first impression. We also know that communicating the contexts and advantages of your schools is especially important in this more competitive job market. The following practices are based on research from educational and governmental organizations. It's not necessary, of course, to include every single suggested component in a job description, but consider how to prioritize based on the type of candidate your school is seeking. These are recommendations in addition to the practices discussed in the previous session on job descriptions for general education teachers. Those suggestions still apply here as well. So here are some reflection questions to start off with. Just to think, they aren't on the note-taking template, but just to consider. When candidates read a job description for your LEA, what do you want them to know that sets your LEA apart from others? If job seekers are unfamiliar with your LEA, maybe they're from a different part of the state or something, what kinds of information are they likely looking for when they read a job post? And if job seekers are unfamiliar with your special education program, what kinds of information are they likely looking for when they read a job post? So as you think about that, if you'd like to share your answers to numbers 2 or 3 in the chat, go ahead and do so. Yeah, so someone mentioned looking for information about ongoing training and support. That is very much something we're going to mention as an effective practice here. Any other thoughts about numbers 2 and 3? Okay, about the students in the school, the population of students served by the school. Which falls into district demographic information, general information about the district. Definitely. And some of these are things that are mentioned and we give examples of them in the previous session on general educator job descriptions as well. Yeah, more information about the special education supports and special education department in general, who they'll be co-teaching with, if anyone. Yeah, those are all great previews of points I'm going to talk about here in some of the examples that we saw. So before making or finalizing changes to any job posts or job descriptions, you would, of course, want to gather input from some folks, including using stay interviews with currently employed special educators to learn about why they decided to stay in their school and role. Stay interviews being, well, the opposite of exit interviews. Why did people stay? And what would make them want to continue to stay in their school and their role? Ask your recent special education hires and or any educator preparation students for special education about what they are looking for in a job and how what they're looking for may differ, in their opinion, from what general education teachers are looking for. And then use this input not only for job posts, but for all recruitment and hiring communications for special educators. And then remember to also ask for feedback after writing a job description before finalizing it. So now we get into the self-assessment notes. So I mentioned at the beginning, if you can, access a draft or posted version of a job description for a special education teacher in your LEA or school. So that may be something you have internally available in a shared drive or folder, or you may go to your school or LEA website to find a posted job description for a special educator, or on one of the job search platforms. But if you are able to access that, do so now. If not, you can still follow along. But as we go through the following slides related to effective practices for special education job descriptions, make notes on your own LEA's job description. And the section of the note-taking template, it starts on page 1, called Self-Assessment Notes. You'll see there's a table there and a place for you to write just some brief notes, whatever is helpful to you, on what are we doing well and what could we improve, as I go through some examples and types of information for the different practices listed here. So the first practice, and some folks already referred to this, is describe your special education program and students. So why does this matter? Well, some of it may seem self-evident, but the role of a special educator can vary widely across positions, schools, and LEAs. So they'd want to know, what is the role and what does it look like in this particular situation? And it may take some digging on the LEA website or even getting in touch with current staff to learn more about your special education department and your approaches. So provide the information up front to candidates. And it doesn't need to be that you write all of this in the job post. It can also be linked information for those who want more information. So here are some examples of questions you might answer, and maybe you already do answer some of them. How does your special education program work, or how is it structured? For example, how many students spend most of their time in an inclusive general education classroom? And as with any recruitment materials, don't sugarcoat. You want to hire teachers who are prepared and motivated to work in your schools as they are. So tell your best true story, a story that is accurate, that reflects what your school is like, who you're looking for, but that does show off what you do well in addition. So if you were able to access an example of a special educator job post for your school or LEA, you can, as I go through these descriptions, be looking at it and make some notes in a note-taking template. Oh, are we including this kind of information about our program and our students? Or if we're not, what is some other information we can include? What could we improve upon? And of course, you can always use the note-taking template, or a colleague or both of you can use the note-taking template at a later time to go through your recruitment materials more thoroughly as well. So some further information around describing your special education program and students, and this is about the students themselves. How can you show the ways that your LEA values and includes students with disabilities? The sorts of special educators you're likely looking for are going to be people who want to work in a place that values and includes and showcases the students they'll be working with. So this can be anything from how are students with disabilities involved in extracurriculars, how are they represented in student decision-making opportunities, participating in academic showcases, etc., according to those individual students' abilities. And how do you set students with disabilities up for success after they graduate? What are examples of what students with disabilities do after graduation? Or what do these alumni have to say about the school, the LEA, and their teachers? And I've talked a lot about testimonials in recruitment materials in the past, and we'll get a bit further into that in a few minutes. Again, all of this is a lot to include in one job post, and it doesn't mean you have to include it all. Or it could be something like, of our graduates, X% do such and such, or say such and such about our program, and then a link to further information. So here's a screenshot from one of the example special educator job descriptions, the one from Salem, Massachusetts. And I just bolded a few examples of where it describes the program and students. So the special educator they're hiring would provide support across a variety of core content areas using a push and inclusion model. So right up front, they're telling us about a model they use. Support, plan, and or co-lead service learning projects. That's something not every program includes. And co-teaching social emotional learning curricula. So those are just some examples of how to specifically call out what this program entails. In Bancroft, New Jersey, they also point out that the person with this role will be providing training for parents and using applied behavior analysis principles, among other things. The next topic is highlighting the supports you offer for special educators. Now, one or two people already mentioned this. You want to show how you are supporting folks in their work to be the best they can. So often, and this has been true for years, special educators report that their principals or other supervisors are not always able to adequately support and evaluate special educators. They also report that professional learning activities do not always apply specifically to special educators' work. And overall, teachers of all positions tend to report that the quality of support and feedback from leaders is a top factor in decisions to stay in or leave a school. So one can extrapolate that it's likely going to factor in their decision to apply to or be hired in a school as well. So some information you could include would be, what particular supports do you provide for special educators to develop their skills? Do special educators participate in differentiated mentoring or induction or ongoing professional learning? How does the LEA provide coaching and feedback for special educators in a way that's specifically applicable to their work? And importantly, how do other school staff, such as school counselors or social workers, help special educators to meet the social emotional needs of students with disabilities, which, as we know, in many cases have increased during the pandemic? Now, you may not know offhand the answer to any of these questions, depending on your role in your school or LEA, and that's fine. These are just things to consider or maybe share with colleagues. So here we have another example from the Bancroft School in New Jersey. And to talk about supports, it mentions a close-knit, committed team inspired to be better teachers, so continuous improvement of practice, providing opportunities to learn and build skills, professional development, career advancement, even tuition assistance. I also want to point out the meaningful purpose statement up here also aligns with some practices mentioned in earlier recruitment sessions we've had about being clear about who you are looking for. We also have this example from California showing that the person they'll be hiring will be working with the classroom behaviorist as a form of support, receiving feedback and coaching from administrative staff and behavioral specialists, and continuing to maintain and enrich expertise. So referring to the supports the special educator will refer doesn't need to be extremely detailed, but you can provide an overview. Now, this next one is related. Explain how special educators collaborate with colleagues beyond coaching and feedback. So large-scale research shows that special educators' decisions to stay or leave the school or the profession overall are not based on the students. Generally, instead, relationships with students and the ability to serve high-need students are factors that tend to increase special educators' retention. Rather, decisions to leave the school or profession are often driven by supervisors, colleagues, or the school or LEA organizations. That means that strengthening the relationships with supervisors and colleagues can increase the likelihood of folks staying in the profession and of being interested in your particular school or LEA in the first place. Productive relationships with colleagues are among teachers' most valued working conditions for teachers overall. And for special educators in particular, the perception of colleague support is a strong predictor of their decision to stay at a school. And therefore, again, we can think it would be a driver of their decision to apply to and accept the position in a school in the first place. Also, special educators are often the sole teacher or one of the few teachers in that particular role in a building. And this can lead to feelings of isolation and burnout, which leads us to how you can show off the collaboration with colleagues. So how do special educators collaborate with special education teachers and other colleagues? How do they collaborate with role-alike colleagues in their schools or in other schools? How do special educators work with paraprofessionals in your school or LEA? And what training do those paraprofessionals receive to prepare them to work in special education? How are special educators intentionally involved in opportunities for leadership, input, and decision-making at the school or LEA level? This is where they sometimes can be left out. Like some of the other suggested content, this sort of information can also apply to all recruitment materials and outreach for special educators, not just a job post or job description. So here again, we have an example from Salem regarding how they will collaborate with colleagues. So working collaboratively with colleagues, consulting with and advising general education teachers and other staff. And this is much more specific because they know what they will be doing and how often. Weekly professional development sessions and weekly grade level team meetings. Also in this example from San Mateo, they will work in tandem with the classroom behavioral specialist and work closely with administration, staff, specialists, and the students' families. We come back to testimonials, which I've been mentioning in many of these workshops, and folks seem to recognize and already use in some cases as a recruitment strategy. So remember, your brand isn't what you say it is, it's what they say it is. Hearing from current teachers and other stakeholders can make a better and more lasting impression on candidates. You are showing the benefits of your schools rather than telling when you use testimonials. So you're not just telling and asking candidates to take your word for it, you're letting someone else show them. Now, you don't need to just include these in the post itself. You can link to written or video testimonials from current special educators students with disabilities, recent alumni, families of students with disabilities, or a leader of special education in your school or LEA. So now we're going to look at an example. There's this interesting statewide campaign from the Hawaii State Department of Education. The purpose of the campaign is to encourage folks to go into special education in the first place, or to move to Hawaii. If they are already special educators, you may be thinking, why does Hawaii need to encourage people to move there? It's Hawaii, but it's expensive. There are a number of factors going on in their education system. So they do have this interesting statewide campaign, and I wanted to include a portion of one particular testimonial because it doesn't just show off the profession as a whole, it shows off a particular school and program. So the following video includes testimonials from a teacher as well as one of his students and the student's parent. And it refers to collaboration among staff and with students and families. So we'll watch about 2.5 minutes of it, that's all.
I knew I wanted to teach. This is my calling, this is my way to give back. Special education for me is not just a job, it's a way of life. The experiences that I have working with these kids, taking them from one level, advancing them to that next level, and seeing them appreciate themselves, seeing them smile. Having parents see them smile. Having a community see them of worth.
Beginning of freshman year, I started to realize that I needed the extra help as much as I could in order to stay successful in school. Mr. Moises helped me a lot with English. He communicates, so he helps making sure that we're on the same page. We're moving together forward.
He's a specific learning disability student. It doesn't stop Anson from having goals and trying to pursue it and be passionate about going after it. He asks questions, he wants to get better every day.
For me, I was part of the special ed class. I grew up in that class too. I needed the help of growing up. So, I'm thankful to get people like Brandon. Until today, he's there for the kids. He's always there.
So the most rewarding part of my job is to see this group of kids who were told, this is where you're at and you may never get anywhere. Build this belief in themselves that they can accomplish anything through not only my efforts, but a collective team effort of teachers, EAs, parents, who all are in it for the same interest with the same goal, to see these kids be successful, have careers, and give back.
Mr. Moises, he basically said, never give up, always chase your dreams and do the best to your ability. He goes at your pace and he helps you, and if you don't understand it, he's gonna go back and help you with that. Mr. Moises, he don't leave you behind. He wants you to strive even farther than others.
All right, so I shared that example not because it is necessary for everyone to have a beautiful, dramatic video with lovely music in the background in order to attract candidates. But just to show examples of the sorts of things that you or your colleagues may already hear teachers, students, and families saying about your schools and your programs, and how you can capture that, whether it's in a video, in a written testimonial, in an audio testimonial, the sorts of things that will be appealing to the candidates who likely have the values and the mindsets you're looking for. So if you are interested in more of that, you can again check out the Hawaii State Department of Education's campaign called Every Student Deserves Someone Special. Again, the campaign is targeted towards recruiting people into the profession overall, but it does have some examples that can be helpful for recruiting to a particular school or LEA. So the last piece we're going to talk about is to be intentional about desired skills and knowledge. So a thoughtful list of desired competencies that you're looking for in a special educator doesn't just communicate who you are looking for, it also communicates who you are as an LEA and as a special education department, what you value, and who your current staff are, because those theoretically also have those competencies that you're looking for in new staff. So with that, we're going to take a deeper dive into desired special educator competencies. So we're going to look at a list of competencies that builds off of general educator competencies included in the previous session. So those still apply, but we will focus on competencies recommended specifically for special educators. So look again at the note-taking template and look at the list that starts on page 2. Look at the list of special educator competencies from the Council for Exceptional Children. And while all competencies listed are important for effectively serving students, put in bold any listed competencies that should be priorities for your schools to include in job descriptions and to communicate to candidates. Now, I should note this is just a preliminary exercise. And of course, colleagues like those in your special education department may have more specific knowledge and ideas about which competencies to prioritize in recruitment materials. So this is just some thinking for the moment, and you may share it with colleagues later. So take 3 or 4 minutes to look at the note-taking template and just identify what are some skills, some competencies listed here that may be priorities to include in job descriptions or job posts. All right. So another thing to consider, and this is just something you can also bring up with colleagues, does your LEA have a uniform profile or description of an effective special education teacher? If so, what skills are required? And how can you more clearly reflect those in a job description? And if not, who would you need to involve in the discussion to develop such a profile? So again, you may not know the answer to this depending on what your role is in your school or LEA, but that can be a possible next step. Who could you ask about to either determine if there is such a profile, or who would need to be involved in the discussion to develop such a profile? Because that is a starting point for making sure you have the right knowledge and skills listed in the job description. Now, a quick resource I want to mention. If you'd like to view suggested skills and knowledge for other school positions, for example, I mentioned paraprofessionals a couple of times, you can go to the end of the note-taking template under the additional resources section. There is a job description writer from the U.S. Department of Labor that provides recommended competencies for various school positions, such as substitutes and paraprofessionals, which they call teaching assistants. So moving on to next steps. I encourage you just look at the next steps section of the note-taking template and just look at the questions there. You don't need to necessarily answer them right now or today, but just think, okay, how would I answer these questions? Do I need to consult with someone else to answer these questions? Or who has the authority to make any changes or other next steps? Because that's what we're going to reflect on in the remainder of our time. Which brings us to LEA planning time. This is also the time, by the way, I should mention that if you have any lingering questions or comments, you can share them in the chat or even by unmuting yourself. But first, if you cannot stay for the remainder of the time, please do look at the bottom of the note-taking template. There is a survey, 4 questions, just to provide feedback from today. Otherwise, if you can stick around for some or all of the next 29 minutes or so, if you know you have another colleague or colleagues from your LEA participating, you can select to go into the breakout room with your LEA's name, discuss the notes you've taken on the note-taking template with your colleagues, and work on the next step section in the note-taking template with them. And feel free to return to the main room with any questions. If you do not have any colleagues from your LEA participating, you can stay in the main Zoom room and respond to the next step section in the note-taking template. You can also ask any questions either in the chat or just by taking yourself off of mute. And you can also share any effective practices already used in your school or LEA in your job posts, because we also like to share positive things that are going on. So with that, does anyone have any comments or questions that you'd like to share in the chat or just by taking yourself off of mute? I'm just responding to an individual question in the chat right now. But if anyone else has any questions, comments, or would like to share something that you already do in your job descriptions at your school or LEA.
Megan,
Mhm.
I really like how the job descriptions that you gave us as examples, how it was more paragraph. You know, back years ago, everything was bulleted, but you couldn't really really express clearly what your intent was. But with the little small paragraphs, I really like that. I really like that.
That's a great observation. You know, it's interesting. I've read from more like advice that's more for like corporations and the private sector. They say if you do a bulleted list of what you're looking for and the tasks rather than paragraphs, they say paragraphs. Basically, they say that if you make a bulleted list, it tends to sometimes dissuade women from applying because, and this is like I guess the studies they've done, not to say it applies to everyone, but it tends to make women feel like, oh, I don't meet one of these bullets, I'm less likely to apply. That said, this is such a women-dominated profession. I don't think that is something we need to think about quite as much
Right,
as some other
right.
fields. But writing it in a paragraph format can be useful for other purposes as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the look of them. I really do. I like the colors and, you know, especially since we post through Frontline,
Mm.
we can, post colors in there. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah. I mean, nothing bold,
Mhm.
fancy, but I really I like the look of them.
Awesome. Does anyone have anything you do in your own job posts for special educators that you would like to share? Or anything you saw mentioned here that you already do?
I think everyone else is in their rooms and it's just me and you.
Well, we have some other people in the main room, but they may be otherwise occupied. You never know.
So when I make these changes, I guess I would have to send it to the special ed department and make sure that they like what I'm requesting. And then, oh, that's a question I wanted to ask you. So, we have autistic support, we have our emotional support, and we have learning support, our MDS. So should each job description be individual or unique to that particular, or should there just be one special ed? Because I see in San Mateo, they have a self-contained classroom teacher.
Mhm. Yeah, so especially for special education, because as I mentioned, the role can vary so much depending on which of those different programs they're working in, for example.
Right.
I can see how you might have a core of the job description that is similar, but you would want to differentiate both so internally you know what you're expecting of each role, but also when you're recruiting so that people know exactly what is expected of them and exactly what the role entails. And when you mentioned, getting feedback from the special education department, another approach could be, if you think about the questions that were listed in the slide deck, or the categories of information, you could instead say, well, think about, well, let's see which questions may be best to answer. Share those questions with the special education department and let them give like the initial input. Like maybe even give them a first crack at writing writing or adding to the job post.
Okay.
Yeah, unless, I don't know how much information you have about their program. Maybe you already know the answers to the questions, but yeah.
Well, you hope, but I don't know. Sometimes new leadership changes things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right. Well, for the next 20 minutes or so, it's really just time for folks to.
So I might as well. All
Sorry?
right.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll see you in another session.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Have a good day.
All right. You too.
All right. And for everyone else who's sticking around, yeah, the next 20 minutes or so are really just for folks to ask any questions, look over the next step section of the note-taking template, share any practices going on in your LEA. If you have to go now, I totally understand. You may want lunch, you may have a million things to do. But if you do have any questions or comments, you can put them in the chat, or you are welcome to take yourself off of mute as well. I tell you what, since we don't have anyone in the breakout rooms currently, if anyone does have any last questions or comments, absolutely, please share them. But otherwise, we can just end a bit early. So does anyone have any last questions or comments? All right. Well, in that case, thank you for joining us. And I hope folks can participate next time and have a great rest of your Tuesday.